Hi everyone, this is Sharon. I am back today with another journal flip through. This one is very similar to the previous one I recorded. I kind of made them at the same time and used a lot of the same types of papers. So looking at the cover of this one, I again embellished my closure with a shoe buckle. I bought a couple pairs of those recently and have been using those up. In this one, I closed with this really fun polka dotted sari ribbon. I'll open that. And as you can see, this is another really pretty, this is kind of a plum colored book cover. And this is from the 1880s. And I just added a little bit of eco-dyed crochet trim on the bottom. This is what the spine looks like. It's Aesop's Fables. And then heading inside, for the spine of this one, I use this really pretty kind of a mauvey purple and brown tapestry fabric. And again, the main kit I used comes from Ida Jane Designs, but I will list all of the ones that I used in this journal down below in the description. So heading through, this little side tuck here is a double tuck, so I've got this little calling card there. And then in this one, I've got this handmade envelope. And this I made from the page of a rose catalog that I have. And then in there, I tuck this index card. It's got a glassine pocket on the front. And I put these two lovely ladies into that. Some places to write on the back. And then on the back side, I lined it with some paper and added a couple of my handmade calling cards. Here I created a side tuck with a bookmark. And then in there, I've got a couple of vintage items. This is a vermouth bottle label and this receipt from Wimple State Bank, dated 1951. Here I put a fabric tab on that page. I've got book pages from botanical books and various other books in here. This is a piece of very old onion skin type paper. It's got some lines on it. And then here is an 1800s book page from Peterson's magazine. And on this side, I folded it up and created a pocket. And then in that pocket, I've got a couple of items. These two guys, the couple, they look like world travelers to me, so I paired them up with a vintage map. But in there, there's a place to write. I just added a little bit of that fabric on the back. And then this is just a piece of that map where you can write on the back side of it. A little stamping on the side of the page. And then in the center here, I used this plate. It's from somewhere. It's called the Horse Guards and Melbourne House, somewhere in England. And then in this pocket, I've got a tag, layered up some pretty lace and papers, and then a place to write on the back, and then another section of that map. And this is another side of that Peterson's magazine book page. On this page, I clipped in a journaling spot and just have some extra writing space in there. This page, I added this embroidery piece for the pocket in the bottom. I really love it. These colors match really nicely with this page. And then in there, I tucked this envelope. I just embellished with a little bit of sari trim. And then in here, this is really neat. It's an invitation from 1936 to a graduation of Rib Lake High School. And they've got the class roll in there, and it looks like about 20 or so people. And this is kind of like a velvety cover to that. I just love that. Then in between these signatures, I tucked this file folder that I made, and it's stiff enough that you could actually use it as a writing board. And inside there, I'll just show you the back as well. And then inside I tucked a number of the book pages from this book. And then I used a couple of the pages to line the inside, and I've just got a couple of pockets in here too. So those would make nice places to store some things. So I've got the fly sheet with the pattern on there. And then the title page, if I can find that one, right here. So it's dated 1888. And then a couple of pages with little stories and pictures on them. On the top of this page, I've added a fabric ruffle. Some more fabric as the tab here. In this page, I've got a pressed flower from my garden, and then here I've got an antique album book page, and I just inserted this pretty little picture of this girl. I love that picture. On this side, I created a pocket, and in there I just tucked some vintage tickets and this little journaling card. A page from one of my bird books. And then here I created a top tuck, and in there I inserted one of my favorite things to do these days, which is to create these fabric sampler sheets. And so the back is an 1864, like a newspaper page from Italy. And then I've added some of my own antique fabrics and some old lace, and then some paper pieces, labels and things. And then this is what the back side looks like. Here I did a little stenciling with some paste. And then in the center, I've got this pretty landscape image. And then I added some stamps to my strings. Here I did a fabric flip with some upholstery fabric. This is from a packet that I got from Rachel at Roxy Creations. I've got a little silk ruffle on the top, and that flips up. And there's a place to write underneath. And then on this side, on this pocket, I lined the back with this piano paper. And then I have this really pretty embossed blue envelope. And in there, I just tucked a few things. This is a negative. And if you hold it up to the light, you can see there's a lady with her hat and her purse standing in front of a tree and some buildings. And then I've got one of my favorite chandelier images that I made into a journaling card, and then a couple of pieces of French magazine pages. On this side, I created this pocket and tucked this journaling card in there. I love this image of this lady. She's got some real attitude. And then I just added some lace on the top of that corner. And then on the back side, I did a little stamping, and that just folds out for some writing space. And then this picture, I love that as well. The dresses from that time. That's great. They look nice, but I don't know if I would want to take the time to get into those. Okay, and then here I embellished with some crocheted lace. On this page, again, I did a little bit of stenciling. And then here, I embellished this collage sheet with some fabric and all kinds of paper and trims and even a little bit of hand stitching. On this page, I created this little flip out from an envelope. This is inspired by Carol Laws. She does a lot of those kinds of things, and I love that. I just trimmed it up a little bit with some things on there and lined it with paper. And in there, I tucked this journaling card that I made. This is kind of a full button card on the back. Here I added a little piece of pressed flowers from my yard. This is an embossed pocket, and in there I tucked a couple of narrow little pieces. That's kind of a fun little bookmark, and then this tag. Here I've got a piece of vellum with some birds on, and then this is some vintage wallpaper. And this side I tucked in, better take that off. This little journaling spot, got a wax seal and some pressed flowers and paper on the top. And I just tied it up with a little bit of string. And then in there I tucked one of those Peterson book pages. So it's got this pretty lady image and then some hats, a collar and more hats. I love those old images. I just did a little punching along the bottom of that. For this page, I used a piece of tissue paper, and what I did was I took these images and I stitched them. First I backed them. Couple steps to this. I backed them with some sewing tissue paper, pattern paper, and then I stitched it to the tissue, and then I did a layer of beeswax over all of it, and it just kind of melded everything together. You can even see some of the lines from the sewing paper coming through to the front. I just like the way that turned out. This is an old 1700s book page. I created kind of a little side tuck there. And then in there, I've got this tag. And I just attached some paper for writing, but it's got some pretty image underneath. And here I've got a piece of vellum with this pretty moth image on it. I just stamped that on the bottom, and there's some pretty antique lace on the top. And then underneath is a ledger page where you can do some writing. Then in the center on these pockets, I lined the top with some paper doilies that were dyed with black beans, so they get that nice blue color. And then I've got a couple of tags in here that I made. This is another pair where I did the one image cut into two and created these tags. I've got this pretty paper on the back. Here I created a little tuck on the bottom with this half circle, and then added this tag in there. And just added a little bit of this, it's an old silk tie piece. Stitched that on. And then the back, I added this image, kind of a fabric sampler. And here's the other side of that tissue paper page that I made. On this page, I clipped a couple of my handmade cabinet cards. So I have these two ladies on the front, and I put them on some pretty stiff card, and then they just have some pretty backs to them. On this page, I created a belly band with this very old trim I got from Rachel. And in there, I tucked this little envelope that I made. It flips open, and in here is this vintage garment label. And then that gives a nice place to write. And on this page, I attached again some of my fun old jewelry piece and then some beads. And then on this page, I created a corner tuck with this vintage envelope. And behind there, I've got this old German invoice from 1938. And then inside the envelope, I've just got a couple of vintage cards, one to the graduate and one to the dearest of mothers. And this is the back side. So I thank you very much for coming along with me today and accompanying me on my journey through this journal. That's all I've got for today. So until next time, bye-bye.